And welcome to our 2024 broadcast. Happy New Year. The U.S. Senate Republicans in early December of 2023 blocked a ban on assault-style weapons, but put forward by Democrats as the United States recorded the highest number of mass shootings for the second year in a row in 2023. Will 2024 be any different? The notion was put forward by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, which would have reauthorized the assault weapons ban, which first passed in 1994 and expired 10 years later. The ban covers certain semi-automatic firearms and large-capacity ammunition magazines. But I know the argument is that this did usher in a decrease of deaths from gun violence while it was in place. But is that really true? Kris Brown is president of Brady United Against Gun Violence. We all know about Sarah and Mr. Brady, her husband, who was Ronald Reagan's former press secretary, who was shot. But no, even after his shooting and his advocacy, they continued to store firearms in their homes. And I know you all, as Kris, as president of the Brady United, advocates for safe storage.
Yes.
You don't want to ban weapons. You want to make sure they're stored safely in the homes, because I don't think many people realize the statistic that 8 to 10 children die a day because of gun violence. You know, I'm interested in your take on this assault weapons ban. We have experts here, Leon Spears, who's president and the owner of DC Concealed Carry, and Sal Greco, who's a 14-year New York Police Department veteran, to talk about it, because I do think as we start out the new year, we need to have a conversation about these assault weapons and also about how we protect these children.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree.
So what is it, do you want the ban of assault weapons, or what is a compromise your organization would support?
Well, first of all, Brady, obviously, as you noted, Armstrong was founded by Jim and Sarah. They were gun owners their whole lives, including after Jim was shot. What we want to do is recognize that we have a public health epidemic in our country, and it is of gun violence. Guns are now the #1 killer of our kids in this country. That's a uniquely American problem. There is no one solution that is necessary to solve it. We have to treat it like the public health epidemic that it is. There are policy solutions. There's certainly a huge and important role for better enforcement, 100%. And we also have to really lift up responsible gun ownership, safe storage, Armstrong, which if everyone who had a gun in the home undertook safe storage today, it would save more lives than any policy or any enforcement action we can take.
Describe safe storage in a home.
Safe
storage. I know
storage.
many gun owners have bought into this program.
Yes, absolutely. So we have a campaign called End Family Fire. Family fire is the unintentional injury or death of a loved one with a gun in the home that is not safely stored. So what is safe storage? Safe storage is putting your gun in some kind of safe, right? Unloaded, ammo separate. Why is that so important, Armstrong? Number one, 8 kids a day are killed or injured with guns in their own home. 75% of school shooters get their guns from a home where those guns are not safely stored. And 65% of all gun deaths, more than 40,000 a year, are suicide. What's the #1 risk factor for a suicide in the home? Presence of a loaded and unsecured firearm. Any barrier that you can put in front of someone who maybe having a really bad day, right? And they get home and they see a loaded and unsecured weapon. The one way to prevent a suicide, if you have a firearm in the home, is to safely store that firearm. So that's why that's so critically important, and we can save so many lives just through the simple mechanism of safe storage. And responsible gun owners across this country understand this. But we have a huge number, 64% increase in gun sales during COVID, of folks who are new gun owners who don't understand perhaps the critical importance of safe storage in their homes.
So, Sal, as a former member of the New York Police Department, how do you challenge or even embrace some of what Kris is saying?
I understand what she's saying. I feel what she's saying. Some of it, I can understand. But as far as they were buying guns, I guess during the COVID lockdowns. Did anyone remember that out in the street, especially in New York City, did you see the anarchy that was going on in the street? That's why people wanted to become gun owners, and it's their right. I mean, it's in the Constitution. And I understand that there's gun violence. I hate to bring this up, but I was a guy that enforced DWIs. I mean, I think a lot more people die under the hands of a drunk driver than they do with somebody with a gun in their hands. I mean, I understand there's mass shootings, but there's also a lot of victims of drunk drivers. So would we ban cars? It's the same concept. I mean, you can't just put a blanket charge over something and say, well, we want to take all the assault weapons. It's people's right. It's not the gun that kills people, Armstrong. It's the people that have it. So then it would go to maybe there's a mental health crisis in this country, because maybe there are some people that have had problems in their past. They decide to go buy a gun in whatever state it is, because again, each state has their own rules, and then they go and do something crazy. And I mean, you can't prevent someone if they're gonna do something crazy with a knife. I mean, there's knives in a home. I'm sure that children play with knives. Use a knife to cut vegetables, don't you? So it's the same concept. We can't just put a blanket over guns and say, all right, well, all assault weapons, they should be banned, and we should take everything out. Everything's usually done at a case-by-case, case-by-case situation. That's how I would view it. And again, I think it's a mental health problem and not a gun problem.
So when we come back, we're going to have your rebuttal. We're going to get Leon Spears involved in the conversation, and we'll be back.
Thank you.
Your response?
Well, I didn't hear anything objecting, actually, to the idea of safe storage
but
of firearms.
But the point he made is with a knife, with a vehicle.
Yeah, and he made a point about mental health, but Armstrong, the United States doesn't have any more mental health disorders that are diagnosed than any other country. We have a lot more gun violence. So the idea that we would allow the continuation of firearms to be the #1 killer of our kids. Knives aren't, firearms are. And the way that we should approach it is like we do all other public health issues. When we had huge numbers of people dying in automobile accidents in the 1950s, we didn't say, what's the one thing that we can do to save lives? We said, what are all of the things that we can do to save lives? That's how we got the national speed limit, seat belts, airbags, bumper rails on the highways. We can take sensible steps that don't in any way. Yes, a process.
So where are you on the assault weapons ban?
We support an assault weapons ban, absolutely.
Why?
Because it worked. When it was passed in 1994, we did
give us
see
the numbers
a
to show that it
decrease.
worked.
We saw about a 50% decrease in the use of assault-style weapons in mass shootings for the decade that assault weapons ban was put in place. And I will say, Armstrong, we've seen a huge number of assault-style weapons used in very notable mass shootings across this country. And why is that? They are highly lethal. They can spray bullets faster than you can with a handgun.
Even though the majority of people die from handguns and not assault weapons.
That's correct. But if you do polls across the country, right, and if you look at the polls and the support nationally for an assault weapons ban, it has grown year after year after year because people are afraid across this country to be in public spaces and go about their business because they're afraid that someone can come in and spray bullets randomly and that they'll be hit. So while we certainly support the idea that folks should be able to go out and buy firearms, these are particularly lethal firearms designed for combat. And by the way, in terms of hunting, you can't carry an assault-style weapon on any federal or state hunting land across this country. Most of those properties require that you limit the bullets, often to less than 5. So in terms of sport and these kinds of activities for hunting, they're inapposite, but they are highly lethal for hunting of human beings. And we think there should be limits.
Leon, your response?
I just disagree 100%. The issue is that, number one, you can hunt with 308s. The assault, quote unquote, the assault weapon platform is just, quote unquote, scary looking to all these left advocates regarding an assault weapon ban. What's an assault weapon? By what definition is an assault weapon? ATF doesn't have a definition of what, quote unquote, an assault weapon is. That's a misnomer. People, just like the other guest, people kill people. They use the firearm as a tool. I do agree that access to firearms is critical in terms of should not have unauthorized persons gaining access to firearms. But when you just start with, quote unquote, rifles, or in this young lady's vocabulary, assault weapons, where does it stop? Do you go with semi-automatic handguns? Do you go with shotguns? Then do you go with revolvers? Where does it stop? Do you only want to limit 10-round magazines arbitrarily? So again, just like your other phenomenal guest, it just happens to be a blanket, and it looks scary. It looks like, quote unquote, a weapon of war. Those are all misnomers. People need to be responsible for handling of firearms. If they're not, then again, law enforcement needs to take appropriate steps, and that's just that. I mean, we have our Second Amendment.
Let me say this.
So
First of all,
it's very clear.
I know you're not to the left, and you agree with us more than we disagree.
Yes.
And you know, I saw this story in December about the twins, young kids. One became upset with the other and shot with a firearm.
Yeah.
And I hear these sad stories. So I think, Sal, what is it that we need to do with assault weapons that we're unwilling to do to make it not only safe, but to reduce the fear that people have surrounding assault weapons?
I think people are just in fear of anything in general. I mean, if you read into what you see in the news every day, it's doom and gloom, especially if, you have these mass shootings that happen. But again, Armstrong, I understand the children, they had they grabbed the firearm. That means whoever owned the firearm didn't put it in a safe place. They didn't have it in a lockbox. And these are things that maybe possibly could be criminal as far as individuals. Because yet again, it goes into an individual basis, not a blanket basis. And I feel sorry for even hearing stories like that. But again, it's the human behind the gun, not the gun. If we're going to say take all the guns, we're going to have a problem, because Armstrong, if let's say we were to ban all assault weapons, there's still assault weapons out there. And as you notice, other countries, whether it be in the Middle East, go to any country where they ban these weapons or they still have these weapons, they're still out there, and it will be used by quote unquote a bad guy or someone with a mental health crisis. So again, those guns are designed to protect you, not to be offensive.
We're going to take a break, and no matter what argument we have, the criminals are not giving up their firearms, and they don't even care about the legality of the argument. And you know, it's a dilemma. It's no cut and dry solutions to this crisis that we face. We'll be back.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence. There's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion, and that is there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com. So, if we've heard this discussion about the different perspectives on the assault weapons, and are you saying just ban them all outright?
We do need a ban. That's the same kind of ban
So
that
they
we
should
had
not even be
before.
manufactured anymore?
I don't think that they should be available for sale or purchase in the United States, yes. However, I want to make something clear in response to some of the prior commentary, which is in the United States today, 1 in 5 Americans either has been shot, has a family member who was shot, or has a close personal friend who was shot as a result of gun violence here in the United States. If we don't do something more, the statistics show that a decade from now, that'll be 1 in 3. I go all over the country and talk to folks, Armstrong, red states, blue states, men, women, people of all demographics. I've never seen the number of people more fearful about gun violence. And I talk to a lot of survivors. So I want to make one point about assault-style weapons to react to what was said by our friends here. I was at Vegas the day after that shooting. It's one of the largest mass shootings that has ever happened in U.S. history. The individual who undertook that shooting did it from a hotel that was several football fields away from the Harvest Festival going on. Hundreds of people were shot in that horrific massacre in less than 2 minutes, Armstrong. And the reason why is an assault-style weapon was used with a high-capacity magazine, several that he had, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, and that high-capacity magazine was capable of having 100 bullets affixed to it. That no one can reasonably argue that that firearm and its lethality is just like a handgun. It's not that people like me are reacting to the scariness of how an assault weapon looks. We're reacting to the carnage. And go talk to anyone who survives that kind of event and understand what it is like to be in combat. Our soldiers in combat experience the exact same thing, and that's what those weapons were designed to do. So I do think we have to have a serious debate about this, but I also know that those countries, Australia and New Zealand, for example, that have banned assault-style weapons, you know what? mass shootings with those weapons have virtually been eliminated. People are alive today in those countries because of those choices.
You know, Leon, it's a compelling argument.
I just think it's buffoonery.
Leon, it's not buffoonery. Come on now.
I literally
But
believe...
buffoonery may not be the right word. You may disagree, but it's not buffoonery.
No, I mean, your guess is a wonderful
Listen, we went to Vegas to cover...
say-
Wait. We went to Vegas and we covered this story, and she's correct. And her descriptions, you can't argue with it. It's just a fact. He shot them like they were animals.
Armstrong, there are two main points that the lovely Kris has made sure.
No pistol can shoot human beings from that distance, several football fields. Leon, they can't.
It's very, very clear. Number one, the statement was originally ban all assault weapons.
But we're only talking about what she just addressed in her compelling argument about what happened in Las Vegas.
I understand that, Armstrong. I understand that. So my thing is that where does it stop? She doesn't want any assault weapon firearm sold in this nation. Does that mean civilians? That
Armstrong.
means law enforcement? That means specifically any sport? Period.
Go ahead and answer quickly before I go to bed.
If that's going to be the focus, let me just say what I personally and Brady would be willing to say is let's ban high-capacity magazines with more than 10 rounds. You can't use them on any hunting property. And let's make the sale of assault-style weapons regulated under the National Firearms Act the same way that we did machine guns. What would these folks react to?
I'm going to break. Sal, what would you say to that quickly in 5 seconds?
I don't mind background checks. I think that the checks they have now, state to state, is good. I mean, it's a state's decision. It's a legislative decision. And
so
remember,
progress. Let me take a break and come back with some final thoughts. So progress here. We'll be back.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
You know, I recently saw on network television physicians and psychiatrists arguing that blaming this violence on depression and mental illness is just overrated.
Yeah. Well, the statistics bear that out, Armstrong. If you are someone who has a diagnosed mental illness, you're much more likely to be the victim of gun violence, not the perpetrator. And
which means that these natural-born killers know exactly what they're doing. And it's intentional and planned and organized.
Normally it is, right? We see from Columbine forward, let's just focus on the school shootings, huge amounts of planning, huge amounts of preparation, often manifestos. I'm thinking about the Tops shooting, which is clearly targeted based on race, and a huge manifesto of planning associated with that. That is absolutely correct.
Sal, do you think there will be any movement on this issue with assault weapons?
Well, it's funny that she mentioned that. I was just trying to go back to what she said a couple of minutes ago with the 1 in 5 and 1 in 3, and that's in the studies. Actually, if you go back to Las Vegas, when that gentleman had all those assault weapons, he was carrying these boxes into the casino. And the one problem we have here is security. There's a lapse in security. No one's asking questions. I mean, it were very large boxes. 2, we go back to what we were talking about recently about policing, proactive policing. See, these guns are also falling into the hands of what? Gang members. Chicago, New York, LA. All these different areas, all these like high, a high suburb, a high city, a big city area. they have these guns. They
Quickly,
have
20 seconds.
Armstrong, I just want to focus on
20
one
seconds.
thing. We have more gun dealers in this country than McDonald's and Starbucks combined. 5% of them are responsible for 90% of the crime guns. We need to focus as much on those dealers who are selling to traffickers knowingly and shut them down. That's the enforcement piece. ATF and the role of police here is so critically important to that. So I just want to make that point.
And I thank all of you for starting and kicking off the new year on this very important topic. I'm Armstrong Williams. Happy 2024.